A devoted wife and mother vanishes into thin air one winter night, leaving behind a trail of secrets, suspicions, and a family shattered by unimaginable evil. My name is Mike. Welcome to The Scary Secret. On a chilly December evening in 2009, in the quiet suburb of West Valley City, Utah, Susan Powell tucked her young sons into bed, unaware it would be the last night her family would ever see her. What followed was a harrowing mystery that gripped the nation, a case of disappearance, suspected murder, and a devastating conclusion where her husband, Josh, in a final act of desperation, murdered their children and himself in 2012, all while Susan's body remains missing to this day. It's a story of hidden abuse, failed justice, and the dark undercurrents of a seemingly ordinary life. But to understand how it all unraveled, we have to go back to the beginning, to the man at the center of it all, Josh Powell. Picture a young woman named Catherine, her heart pounding as she drives through a relentless rainstorm over Snoqualmie Pass in late November 1999. She's in the passenger seat of her boyfriend Dennis's Mitsubishi Galant, heading west toward Seattle. The wipers slap furiously against the windshield, mirroring the anxiety twisting in her gut. Catherine isn't eager for what's waiting at the end of this road. A reunion with her ex-boyfriend, Josh Powell. He could be charming one moment, sweet and attentive, but if things didn't go his way, that facade cracked, revealing something controlling and unnerving. Catherine had dated Josh before any of this nightmare unfolded, a full decade before Susan's name would become synonymous with tragedy. She'd kept her story private, sharing it only with close friends and family, fearing the backlash from Josh or his dysfunctional clan. But digging through old files from Josh's computer reveals glimpses of her, a name mentioned sparingly, as if he'd tried to erase her from his history. Now, for the first time, her account sheds light on the man Josh was becoming. Back then, Catherine hadn't told Dennis much about Josh, just that he'd been domineering, isolating her from friends, until she convinced herself things would improve with time, maybe even marriage. She'd broken up with him over the phone in March during a visit home to Utah. Josh hadn't yelled or raged. He'd gone quiet, asking flatly what she wanted to do with her belongings. Put them in storage, she'd said. I'll come get them later. Months passed. Catherine met Dennis, fell in love, and when she called Josh to say she was coming to Washington, she fibbed a little for safety. Told him Dennis was her fiancé, not just her boyfriend. She figured it would deter any attempts at manipulation. Josh insisted on meeting that very night to drop off a pass to the Pacific Science Center, even though she doubted they'd use it. It felt like a ploy to size up the situation. They checked into a hotel north of downtown as dusk fell early. Around 11 p.m., a knock echoed through the room. Dennis, tall and broad at 6'1", opened the door. Filling the frame, Josh, shorter and slimmer, looked up, his eyes widening. You must be Dennis, he said, handing over the pass with forced cordiality. They arranged to exchange Catherine's things the next day, but the encounter left an uneasy chill in the air. This wasn't just a simple breakup story. Josh's life was a tapestry of failures and fractures, woven from a childhood marred by chaos. Born in 1976 to Steve and Terica Powell, Josh was the first son in a family that outwardly resembled a typical Latter-day Saint household in Spokane, Washington. They had a spacious home on an acre lot in Veradale, attended church, and seemed picture perfect. But beneath the surface, rot festered. Steve, Josh's father, harbored dark secrets. When Josh was young, Terica discovered Steve's hidden journal, hundreds of pages detailing explicit fantasies about another man's wife. Steve fantasized about plural marriage, even hinting at eliminating the woman's husband to make it a reality. Terica, pregnant with their youngest, Alina, confronted him. Steve promised change, but showed no real remorse. The family teetered on the edge. Steve's apostasy from the church deepened the divide. He mocked Mormon teachings, feeding his kids radical ideas. Humans were mere animals, free to indulge in sex without boundaries. Magazines littered the home. Worse, Steve admitted years later to inappropriate attractions towards his own daughter, Jennifer, describing moments that drove him nuts, like seeing her in a t-shirt and panties. The turmoil boiled over. When Jennifer was 14, Terica moved out briefly after Steve tried to turn the kids against the church. Jennifer chose her mother's path, rejecting her father's influence, but the boys, Josh, John, and Michael, were more malleable. Josh loved Boy Scouts, earning badges and camping, but Steve ridiculed it as church-sponsored nonsense until Josh quit in shame. Home life turned violent. At 13, Josh threatened his mother with a butcher knife. He killed his sister, Alina's gerbils, forcing her to touch their blood. Court records later revealed he and John had been caught examining Alina inappropriately. At 14, Josh attempted suicide by hanging, leaving rope burns on his neck. Counseling followed, but the damage was done. Steve and Terica tried marriage counseling, but peace was fleeting. One night, Steve slapped Jennifer over a sewing machine dispute, cementing the family's dysfunction. Amid this, Josh joined a youth folk dance group called Silver Spurs, where he met a girl named Sarah. They shared innocent teen moments, long talks, sneaking out at night, but it hinted at Josh's emerging pattern with relationships. Fast forward to Catherine's story. The day after the hotel meeting, she and Dennis headed to Josh's apartment. Josh greeted them awkwardly, leading them inside. The place was sparse, but Catherine's boxes waited. As they loaded the car, Josh pulled her aside for a private chat. His demeanor shifted. He begged her to reconsider, insisting they were meant to be. Catherine stood firm, but Josh's eyes betrayed a mix of desperation and calculation. They drove away, but Josh wasn't done. He followed them in his car, tailing closely through Seattle traffic. Dennis noticed, weaving through lanes to lose him, but Josh persisted, honking and gesturing wildly. Panic set in. Catherine feared he'd ram them. They sped to the hotel, grabbed their things, and fled the city, hearts racing. This encounter revealed Josh's obsessive side, a harbinger of what Susan would face. Josh's journals, both written and audio, overflow with laments over failed romances. In one recording from 1999, he mourns a lost friend with poetic intensity, revealing a man who viewed love as possession, rejection as catastrophe. Susan's story echoes these patterns. She met Josh later, drawn into his web despite red flags. Their marriage crumbled under control, isolation, and abuse, culminating in her disappearance during that fateful camping trip Josh claimed to take with the boys in a blizzard. Police suspected him immediately. Blood in the home, a wet fan drying the couch, but evidence fell short for arrest. As scrutiny mounted, Josh's father, Steve's obsession with Susan emerged. Secret photos, stolen underwear, twisted fantasies. The tragedy peaked in 2012 when Josh, losing custody of Charlie and Braden, barricaded himself in a rental home during a supervised visit. He attacked the boys with a hatchet and then ignited a gasoline-fueled explosion, killing all three. Susan's fate remains unknown, her case a cold file, but the echoes of Josh's broken past scream warnings. What drives a man to such depths? A toxic upbringing, unchecked obsessions, a system that failed to intervene. Susan's disappearance isn't just a mystery. It's a cautionary tale of ignoring the monsters in our midst, of love twisted into lethality, and through her body eludes discovery. Her story endures, urging us to see the signs before it's too late. In the quiet suburbs of Puyallup, Washington, Susan Cox was a bright-eyed 19-year-old with a passion for beauty and a heart full of faith. She had just started cosmetology school, spending her days perfecting haircuts and colors, then rushing to her evening job at JCPenney's jewelry counter. Life was busy, but Susan was on the rebound from a recent breakup, open to new possibilities. Little did she know, one church dinner party in November 2000 would change everything. That's where she met Josh Powell, a 24-year-old with a charming smile, a motorcycle, and a hidden past of debt and desperation. Their story is a part of a larger tragedy. Susan vanished from her Utah home in 2009, suspected murdered by Josh, who later killed their two sons and himself in a horrific 2012 explosion, leaving Susan's fate unsolved and her family in eternal grief. But to grasp the horror, we must trace the roots of their doomed union. Josh was struggling, fresh from a messy breakup with Catherine. He was drowning in debt, about $400 a month just to keep creditors at bay. He worked at Verco like his dad Steve, but feared losing his job. Yet he threw dinner parties at his Tacoma apartment, inviting church friends to maintain an image of stability. Money was tight. He had only $1,000 in savings and grumbled about guests raiding his freezer for extras like orange juice. It gets extremely expensive, he'd later record in his audio journal, his voice laced with frustration. That fateful night Susan attended. She had just turned 19, met Josh at a Latter-day Saints Institute class where young adults studied religion. Josh had been vying for her attention against a friend, but was ready to quit. Dinner changed that. When the meal ended, Josh asked for help with dishes. Susan stepped up, sleeves rolled, suds flying. In that mundane moment, sparks flew. Doing dishes together, Josh recalled. She decided she loved me. For him, it was the turning point. They shared their first kiss that evening, and Susan knew he was the one. Josh's voice, captured on his handheld recorder, reveals a man starved for affection. Sometimes I feel like I can't reach any girls anywhere, he lamented months earlier. Susan was different, beautiful, kind, and attentive. She thought he was hot, smart, independent. He lived the church standards, or so it seems. I feel like I had been incredibly blessed because of my righteousness, Josh had recorded, tying his faith to fortune. They had been in common beyond their religion and sign language, but opposites attract, right? Their first date, the perfect storm, at the movies, Subway sandwiches after. From day one, marriage talk swirled. They marked November 11th, 2000 as their start. I love this girl, Susan Marie Cox, Josh gushed in his journal. Every day I love her more. But his affection had edges. He admired how she cared for him and his space, doing dishes unmasked, dusting idly. It's important to me to have someone who takes care of me and my stuff, he said, sounding more possessive than romantic. Susan worked tirelessly from 7:30 a.m. at school to late nights at Penny's. Josh, in his business school at University of Washington, Tacoma, needed $1,500 for tuition. No aid came, so he loaned it. He valued Susan's clean credit, her earnings potential. I want her to make as much money as she possibly can, he recorded, praising her tips and compliments. It wasn't just love, it was practical. Christmas approached. Josh visited Susan at work, claiming to buy a ring for his mom. He picked one, had her use her employee discount. Surprise, it was her engagement ring. They dated less than 2 months. I don't want her to have a big rock to attract someone who would want to hurt her, Josh explained, his words dripping with control disguised as care. January 5th, 2001, Susan arrived at Josh's after work. He blindfolded her with a shirt, led her inside. Removing it revealed a dozen white roses in crystal, a drawing of the Portland LDS temple against his futon, the same one from his time with Catherine. Hymns played softly. A camcorder, borrowed from his dad, captured it all. Josh had her read a scripture on eternal marriage. Then he recited a poem he had written at 18. Marriage is for the most in love. For two so deeply in love, they became the love they sow within each other. It was awkward, earnest. Kneeling, he proposed. Will you marry me? A whispered yes, a kiss, a hug. Friends worried, Susan's parents fretted. Chuck Cox, her dad, called their bishop. I don't think they understand what it means to be married for time and all eternity. The bishop brushed it off. Susan spent nights at Josh's, falling asleep there. She lived with Sister Mary, but felt unwelcome amid liquor in the fridge. Chuck discovered it via voicemail. Her mom wants to talk to her by herself. Susan confessed it pained her parents. That's not a good thing to do. Let your fiancé be traveling home late at night, unescorted, Chuck said. Josh didn't care. Boundaries weren't his thing. Growing up, he had had no curfew. Did as he pleased. His sister, Jennifer, recalled, boundaries? There are no boundaries. Jennifer in Utah heard about Susan. She came from a good LDS family. Maybe he'll be all right because he's got her now. Josh aimed to win over the Coxes, but tension simmered. Josh's past loomed. He'd met Susan years earlier at 18, when she was 12 visiting her sister's house. She is really cute. Too bad she's too young, he thought. Now engaged, their whirlwind hid cracks. Josh's debt, his self-centered love, his family's dysfunction, Steve's obsessions, the divorce scars. As wedding plans formed, Susan's independence clashed with Josh's control. She'd soon move in fully blending lives, but whispers grew. What did she see in him? The answer lay in Susan's optimism, her belief in change. Yet his union sowed seeds of tragedy. Susan's 2009 vanishing, Josh's camping trip, alibi in a blizzard, bloodstains at home, Steve's creepy fixation on her, photos, underwear, journals. It escalated to 2012. Josh, losing custody, hatcheted his boys, blew up the house. Susan's story warns of red flags ignored: quick engagements, isolation, financial ties masking manipulation. Her body unfound, justice incomplete, but her light endures through those who remember, a vibrant woman lost to darkness, urging vigilance in love's name. April 6, 2001, dawned bright over the Portland, Oregon temple. A gleaming white spire against the Pacific Northwest sky. Inside, 19-year-old Susan Cox, radiant in her wedding gown, stood beside 24-year-old Josh Powell as they exchanged vows, not just for this life, but for all eternity, according to the teachings of their faith. Friends and family filled the sealing room, smiling as the couple promised forever. Outside, receptions followed. One simple lunch at a buffet, another more formal gathering. Susan's parents, Chuck and Judy Cox, footed most of the bill, while Josh's father, Steve, contributed a modest $100, yet grumbled about the cost. It was a small omen, perhaps of the imbalance to come. This marriage is woven into a larger nightmare. Susan's sudden vanishing from her Utah home in December 2009. The immediate suspicion falling on Josh. His bizarre alibi of midnight camping in freezing weather with their toddler sons, and the heartbreaking finale in 2012 when Josh murdered those boys, Charlie and Braden, before taking his own life in a gasoline explosion. Susan's body has never been found, her case a chilling reminder of hidden abuse behind closed doors. But the cracks started early, long before the world knew her name. The honeymoon was modest, a quick trip before reality set in. Money was tight from the start. Josh, with his business degree, bounced between jobs, while Susan, fresh from cosmetology school, worked hard at salons and later in finance. They moved into a small apartment in Tacoma, Washington, but debt piled up fast. Josh's spending habits didn't help. Gadgets, tools, projects that drained their accounts. To dig out, they did something drastic. They moved in with Josh's father, Steve Powell, in Puyallup. It seemed practical: save on rent, pay down loans. But living under Steve's roof exposed Susan to a side of the Powell family she hadn't fully seen. Steve was divorced, bitter toward the church, and harbored unsettling views on relationships, views that made Susan uncomfortable from the beginning. Josh, loyal to his dad, dismissed her concerns. Arguments flared over boundaries, faith, and finances. Susan clung to her beliefs, attending church, tithing faithfully, while Josh grew apathetic, echoing his father's cynicism. Early recordings capture the tension. Susan, in a 2000 audio journal, confessing cycles of meanness. Josh is mean to me, but only because I was mean to him first. But I still love him, even though he won't kiss me. It was a pattern. Petty fights escalating, apologies fleeting. By 2004, things improved briefly when they bought a home in West Valley City, Utah, hoping a fresh start would heal the rifts. Their first son, Charlie, arrived in 2005, a joyful moment, though Josh oddly refused to drive Susan to the hospital during labor, insisting her parents handle it because he had something to finish. Braden followed in 2007. Susan poured her heart into motherhood, decorating the house, working at Wells Fargo Investments, biking to save gas. Outwardly, they looked like a young family building a life, but inside, control tightened its grip. Josh dictated the budget with an iron fist, yet splurged on his hobbies: generators, camping gear, tools worth thousands. He declared bankruptcy in 2007, wiping out debts but straining trust further. Susan's journals from 2008 paint a desperate picture. One entry: I feel like a prisoner in my own family, fighting to practice my own religion and beliefs in my own home. I can't believe our marriage deteriorated so quickly. I feel so blind and naive and foolish. She confided in friends like Christy Hellwell about shouting matches over politics, money, faith. Josh blaming external forces like Republicans and the economy for his cruelty. Faith became a battleground. Susan wanted to tithe, attend temple services. Josh mocked it, refusing to support her spiritually. Finances fueled fire. He'd buy expensive items, a car rack for camping they never did, then lecture her on spending. Susan documented it all, filming their possessions in July 2008 for insurance purposes, narrating tools and furniture with a hopeful tone. Hope everything works out and we're all happy and live happily ever after, as much as that's possible. But privately, fear grew. By late 2008, Susan hit a breaking point. After one explosive argument, she paced angrily, telling Kersey it shook her to the core. She began hiding documents, a handwritten will in June 2008 stating, "If I die, it may not be an accident, even if it looks like one." She added a secret note, "For family and friends of Susan, all except Josh Powell. I don't trust him." Months later, she told coworker Linda Bagley, "If something ever happens to me, make sure they look at Josh." Her parents bought her a secret cell phone for emergencies, sensing the abuse, emotional, financial, isolating, even if no fists flew. Susan tried counseling through their church, pouring out frustrations, but Josh deflected, charming when needed. She considered divorce, telling friends she'd leave by their anniversary if nothing changed. Yet hope lingered. She loved her boys fiercely, believed in redemption. In emails and messages, regret surfaces. "I'm finding out more and more that family and friends were seeing the red flags long before I did. I wish they would have said something." These years forged the tragedy ahead. Josh's obsession with control, inherited dysfunction, unchecked spending, all simmered. When Susan vanished that December night in 2009, police found telling clues: blood on the carpet, a fan blowing to dry it. Josh's implausible story, his father's later fixation, secret videos, stolen items, only deepened the darkness. The 2012 explosion ended lives but not questions. Where is Susan? What final act of desperation claimed her? Her story echoes a stark truth. Love can blind us to danger. Red flags waved off as quirks. Quick engagements, financial dominance, isolation from faith and family. These aren't just strange, they can be chains. Susan's hidden writings scream a warning. Trust your gut, document the fear, reach for help before the prison door slams shut. In her absence, her voice endures, a beacon for those trapped in similar shadows, reminding us that internal bonds, when twisted, can become eternal scars.